Hi, my name is Jason Gilmore, CTO of DreamFactory, and joining me today is Citrix domain specialist John Moody.
Hi,
We're
Jason.
going, hey, John, we're going to spend some time today talking about certainly one of my favorite topics, and I'm sure it's one of John's as well, microapps. And specifically, we're going to talk about how the DreamFactory platform and Citrix Workspace microapp builder can work together to quickly create API-driven microapps. So John, thank you very much for taking the time today. And before we jump into our microapps demo, could you just spend a few moments talking about or introducing Citrix Workspace and kind of put this conversation into context?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Good to be with you. So really, the problem that we're trying to solve at Citrix is how do we make our end users more productive? How do we enable your average user to quite frankly get work done and go about their day in the most streamlined and efficient way as possible? And what we see out in the industry is, back when I first started out in IT, you had a PC on your desk, you had a username and password, and then you'd connect to a client server application, and that was it. You'd then leave work at the end of the day and go home, and that was your day done. Now what we're seeing in the modern enterprise today is users are working, particularly as we've all seen this year, we've got users working at home, working from different locations. And really then the complexity that IT has faced as well is we now have new kinds of applications. So we have Windows applications that we're still trying to look after. We've got Linux applications. We've got SaaS-based apps, internally written applications, mobile devices, mobile applications. And on average, what we see now is users using between 3+ devices a day, going across different kinds of application, and needing to do that in a secure fashion from different locations. And what we've also found as well through our research is that users are constantly context switching between different apps. And if you're working on a report in, say, Microsoft Word, and then you get a notification through, and you go and say, deal with that email or deal with that text message, it's going to take you 20 minutes for your brain to work out to get back on task. And that's a real distraction, and that leaves users to be unhappy in the way that they're working when we're already having to work a lot in isolation at the moment anyway. So really, the challenge that Citrix is really focused on at the moment is how do we organize work? How do we guide users through that work? And then eventually what we're looking at is how do we then start to automate that for them? And so really the guiding of work is organizing all the applications, desktops, and content that our end users need in one place, which is what we call Citrix Workspace. So I can access my Citrix Workspace from any device, on any network, from any location, and I'm trusted. I know that I'm secure. I have access to all the applications I need. I can single sign-on to all these applications and do the stuff that I need to do. And where we're going with microapps is what we found is users are used to that consumer world. So we're all used to, for example, booking an Uber. So I go through a straightforward workflow of opening up the Uber app, requesting my Uber. I don't go through a separate system to authorize my credit card. I don't go through the taxi booking system. It's just a straightforward workflow. Really what Citrix wants to do with microapps is bring that consumer experience to the enterprise application space. And what we find is end users will typically only use somewhere between 10 and 15% of an enterprise app. So what we want to do is if we can extract those workflows out of those enterprise SaaS applications and just give those to end users as microapps, then hopefully we can make their day go a little easier.
Fantastic. And I mean, maybe if I stop sharing my screen, like how does this fit into the Citrix Workspace environment?
Sure. So I've got a nice demo here of Citrix Workspace, and this is our web-based client. We have clients that go across pretty much everything right now. So Mac, Windows, OS, Linux, iOS, Android. But I'm just showing for the purposes of the demo the Windows version. Our UI is the same across every device as well. So the look and feel I get on my mobile is exactly the same as I get here. What you'll notice is of all my applications that I need, that my organization has given me access to, and I favorited, I've got all those in one place, and I can click on any of these, and I will single sign on into those applications. And I can do the things I need to do. So I'm going to single sign on here into Salesforce, for example, and I can update the latest customer meeting I've been on, for example. And I'm not having to enter additional credentials to do that. It is literally just logged on and secured via Citrix Workspace. If I'm particularly secure in my organization as well, I can also do things like session-based watermarking on those SaaS-based apps. So I can do things like launching, as we're doing here, what we call a secure connection. So what we're not doing here is storing any sort of Salesforce data locally on my client. This is going to be delivered as a remote session from a secure Citrix data center up in the cloud. And so I'm not leaving any sort of footprint behind on my end user's device. What you'll notice here as well is I've got session-based watermarking. So if somebody was to come up behind me and take a screenshot, then at least we know where that came from. And it's really the same experience with me accessing all my desktops as well. So I've got desktops here based in the cloud or within an on-premises data center, and the same with all the content and documents and files I need to work on as well. And really, when we come down to the Microapps, we have this activity feed. So these are events that require my attention that have come out of the various different Microapps that I need, that I currently have access to. And what we do is we use our analytics platform in the background to tailor this feed, so it's only the information that I need to deal with at that point. So the typical use case for the kind of the activity feed is on the commute, on the way to work, on the train, for example, I can just go through and clear off items that are on my notification list. And that'll be things like submitting employee feedback or approving a team member's expenses or updating sales leads. So the example here, I've got an expense report that a member of my team, Stella, has submitted. Now, normally what I'd have to do is I'd have to log into Concur or another expenses system and actually look at and approve those expenses. But with the Microapp, I can see that in my notification feed. And I can actually pop that out into the blade and I can see the expenses and I can approve directly from within Workspace. So I've not had to change my UI, I've not had to do that context switching between the different applications, and then that's disappeared off my feed list and I can just carry on and look at the next thing. And I've got a course that I could apply for, which is coming out of, again, another SaaS-based application. And I can hit register and away I go. That notification disappears out of my feed again and I can carry on with the next stuff. And then hopefully when I'm up to date, I've got nothing else in my feed to deal with. But I may need to do something like locate somebody in our office. So I've got a Microapp here whereby I can find out who's in the office today and actually then use Citrix Workspace to go find them in that office using our mapping technology. So really all these Microapps are very extensible, they're all API driven, but this is what then kind of the reason why we got talking, Jason, is the reason why we started talking was, what about those applications that don't have an API?
Exactly, and just I really like the examples that you just showed, because it really summarizes certainly why I think Microapps are such a big deal, right? We have all of these different enterprise applications, and after a time, you find yourself effectively drowning not only information, but in tasks. So I have to approve expenses. I have to find an employee. I have to register for a course. All of this information was previously, and still to a large part is, isolated within these large applications. I might have to drill down through a menu to find it, if I find it at all, because I might not even be aware that, for example, my colleague has submitted an expense for approval. Yeah,
right? we have a great real world use case from a customer I worked with earlier on in the year, and they'd ordered, we were on a call and they were complaining that they'd ordered a new corporate mobile, and they kept getting harassing emails in their inbox to approve the delivery of their mobile. And these were automatically generated system events coming out of their SAP system. we're talking to this guy on the phone, and he's saying, I just simply don't know how to log into SAP to approve the fact that my mobile phone's been delivered. And that's a great use case for us, because we can say, well, if that's just a matter of receipting goods, why would you want to log on to complex software like SAP to be able to go just do an approval? That's not something routinely as an end user I'm going to do, but I've got to receipt the goods. Finance need to know that. But as an end user, that's really hard. And it took him almost half a day to go through 3 different people to find out how to actually log on to SAP and then find the workflow to be able to approve those expenses. And I think a lot of enterprise software is like that. Unless you're using it day in, day out as part of your job, it can be quite complex. And the perfect analogy is the big photocopier multifunction printer that we have in the corner of the office. You know, it'll do bookbinding, it'll do stapling, it'll do double-sided printing, we can collate copies. Probably me and you, Jason, walk up with a piece of paper, put it onto the photocopier and press the button 5 times because we want 5 copies. And really, that's what we want to make with Microapps, is make them the big green button. Just the majority workflows that most people want to use. We will never replace the finances team's need to use SAP. That's not what we're about. What we're about is the everyday user who needs to interact with these systems, but it's maybe not their primary job focus.
That's exactly right. So I mean, in a nutshell, I think we could summarize Microapps as really embodying 3 key attributes. One is that the microapp is laser focused on a specific task, expense approval or course registration. 2, the microapp, I was going to say, is mobile friendly, but more to the point, that's responsive. You can interact with it on your desktop or on your iPad or on your mobile phone equally well. 3, it's notification driven, right? I'm not looking for the information. The information is coming to me. And in the case of Citrix Workspace, it's showing up in the activity feed and made abundantly available to any employee who logs in to their environment. And there's I guess, a 4th unofficial attribute, which I think is equally as important. In some, not all cases, it's, I think, at least a valuable exercise to consider a microapp to have perhaps a relatively short lifespan, meaning maybe we have a conference coming up or some other event that is going to be effectively temporary. Maybe we're working on a new project and there's a deadline coming up. And we believe that a microapp could help us perform tasks associated with that event or that project faster and more efficiently. Mm-hmm. So we could actually create a microapp that maybe is only around for 3 months. And if you were to do this manually, that kind of mindset is pretty difficult to wrap your head around, because what are we gonna do? Devote all of this developer time and expense to building something that we're just gonna throw away? It might not make a lot of sense. However, what we're finding with DreamFactory and Citrix Workspace Microapp Builder is that we can very quickly, in fact, as we'll demonstrate in a moment, with no coding at all, piece together an API-driven microapp that has a great interface and that, more importantly, satisfies all of those previously mentioned attributes.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we start taking a look?
Yeah, yep, great.
Okay, so just while I bring up here. So really our use case, Jason, I suppose started around with the microapp builder and microapps in general. As far as Citrix Workspace goes, we're dependent on having a RESTful API to talk to. And we still have a lot of customers that aren't 100% in the cloud. We very much see the future of the world in that sort of hybrid model. And whilst we can remote all those legacy Windows applications back to end users, as far as microapps specifically go, we are dependent on a RESTful API. So really our use case came about is, well, how do I give a user access to a on-premises or cloud-hosted SQL-style database that doesn't have traditional REST API endpoints? And obviously with the work that you and I have done, we've kind of managed to integrate into MySQL through a Citrix microapp using DreamFactory based APIs. So I'll give a quick tour of how we've actually built that. So firstly, this is our Citrix Microapp Builder, which is available from Citrix Cloud. We will provide some links about how you can go get one of these instances yourself. We give you that for 30 days, and you can renew that as many times as you like through our developer portal. And this basically allows you to start building and playing around with microapps. We have a number of integrations that we offer out the box. So these are integrations that Citrix has written. So we hit the most popular kind of SaaS-based apps available today. But what we also give customers the ability to do is basically create your own using our HTTP web service. And this is what we use to create our hooks into the DreamFactory APIs. So we're going to take a look at an integration that we built. Our use case was somebody who works in the marketing team and responsible for the maintenance and management of products. In particular, one of the workflows they have to do is approve when a new product's added to the database, is to approve the description of the product to make sure it matches with corporate guidelines. So what I've done is I've created an integration into our MySQL database, which is called Products. And this is really so simple, really. Is I provide the base URL, which I can get out of my DreamFactory instance. I provide the API key, and that's my connection into the DreamFactory APIs created. I can then start loading the tables out of that database into our cache. So everything within Microapps is cached on our side. And then when we do HTTP posts back out, that's when we'll update the MySQL database on the back end. But we have a cache on our side, which is representation of that backend database, and we can configure how often we refresh that cache, from anything from every minute to every 24 hours. So once we've brought that in, we've brought our product tables in. What we can then do is start building our microapps, and you'll see 3 here. If I just flick over to our example user, you'll see that they're the 3 microapps or workflows that my user has access to here. So if we take a look at, let's say, adding a new product. So my adding a new product comprises of a page, which you'll notice from the initial demo was the page that flips out of the side. So it's very simple, straightforward, of adding in a few fields and a button, which links back to a service action, which is basically our HTTP post back to the MySQL database. In fact, let's take a quick look at that. So I configure my service actions here, as we call them, of adding a new product. And this is basically doing a HTTP post through the microapp builder of the parameters and the contents of that form, updating the database on the back end. Probably the best way to show this actually is just to show you. So if we wanted to add a new product to our database, we can basically do basic CRUD updates as we go, and obviously I'll be able to do this through a mobile interface. This would work exactly the same as way on my mobile phone. And away we go. So that will now post that directly to the MySQL database on the back end. And there we go, we've sort of simplified that workflow. Just to cover all the points here. So we use the service actions to kind of get that post back. For notifications, we basically, what we do is we're in this particular example, we're looking for new products added to our database, but I can configure this as to look at change records or other criteria to actually then create the rule set, if you like, for where that notification appears. And the subscribers I have to this microapp are the ones who will then get that notification. There is then Citrix Analytics on the back end of this as well, which again tune that feed even finer. So what we don't want to do is the notification feed to be full of stuff that I'm not interested in. So this in particular example, what we're looking for is a new record in our product table. And then basically we then create and build what we want our notification to look like. And what you'll notice from this example, and if I just flick back over to here, is I can actually approve that directly from the notification feed. So yes, I can pop out the blade at the side. I can view my product description and make any changes and approve it. But if it was one I was happy with, then I can just hit approve directly from within notification feed, and away it goes, and that update's done. So yeah, Jason, any further bits we want to show on this?
Yeah, so I mean, just a quick recap here, and I mean, your your walkthrough really summarizes why I'm in love with this workspace or this micro app builder. There was no code at
Yeah,
all written to perform this integration. And I'll
absolutely.
walk through the DreamFactory side in a moment. We generated that API in DreamFactory. We hooked that API into the micro app. The micro app builder has a drag and drop interface for creating the forms and the various layouts that the micro apps use. You configure the notifications through, again, the point and click interface. And you tie in in the case of add new product, the post back, right? The post integration back to that DreamFactory API. So once you understand what the flow of steps looks like to build the micro app, you can have one of these up and running. I mean, I've seen you blow through it in less than 20 minutes, right?
Yeah,
And you have a working interface that's tied in via the Citrix Cloud authentication integrations. So you could tie this to specific Active Directory groups, for instance,
absolutely.
or
Yeah,
specific individuals. When they log into their workspace the next time, those notifications will immediately start showing up. So it's very well put together. It's very logical, and as I mentioned, it's great that the integration with the builder and DreamFactory is so seamless, thanks to the Microapps builder, Microapps builders HTTP
yeah.
interface.
And we've really developed this to make it as easy as easy as possible for customers to start creating their own micro apps. We can do data filtering on these pages. We can add logic in there. We can hide and display fields as and when, or if not, they're required. We've shown the example here of adding a new product. It is the same kind of, let's show a different example. So we can do things like search in the database, which uses a slightly different kind of page. So we can just display results. So essentially the results of a query or an API call that we've made. So we've got all these different kind of page templates that we can utilize. We keep the UI elements the same. So the same UI elements are used across all different kinds of micro app integrations, regardless of the application or the backend that we're connecting to. Probably one of the most often asked questions is, oh, can I add in a different colored button, or can I add a different kind of way of doing it? And really our answer to that is the whole intent of this is we should really ignore the application that we're connecting back into. So we can even have micro apps that cross the boundaries between 2 or 3 different applications. And I know you guys have a similar sort of thing with data mesh, but we can kind of do that thing like maybe I pull some information out of Salesforce, and then through the pages I can then post it back to my MySQL database. So really all those UI elements are designed to be nice, simple, easy to use. And once I got that initial configuration gone, then as you quite rightly say, there, it is pretty simple to start. I mean, if I can do it, then I'd argue anybody can.
Great. So we've talked about micro apps. We've presented the demo, walk through how you can add products, you can approve products, you can search for products. And as John mentioned or explained, you are going to hook into, in this case, DreamFactory generated API endpoints. So next, why don't I just take a couple minutes to explain how that API was generated in the first place. Let me go ahead and share screen. Okay. John, can you see my DreamFactory environment?
I can indeed.
Great. So for those of you who are new to DreamFactory, you are currently looking at the web-based administration console, which is integrated with all versions of the platform, whether it's open source or one of the commercial versions. And it's here where you're going to manage everything pertaining to your API infrastructure. You're going to generate and manage API keys, manage your administrators, your users, your role-based access controls. Of course, this is where you will generate APIs and integrate with other APIs, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. You can view your API docs within this interface. So anytime DreamFactory generates a new API, it will also generate all of the associated open API or Swagger documentation for that API. You can extend API endpoint capabilities using our scripting engine integration. PHP, Python, and Node.js are supported. You can impose volume limits on your APIs at the user level, the API level, even at the method or endpoint level. So you could impose, for example, a limit of 100 reads per minute and 5 inserts per minute for a specific API. You can schedule API calls, maybe call an API every 5 minutes and so forth. So the point here is this web-based interface provides you with an easy point and click solution for managing all aspects of your API environment. Now, I do like to point out that everything you do here, 100%, can also be programmatically done. So DreamFactory exposes a series of system and user APIs that allows you to, for example, generate APIs from JSON files, or revoke API keys, or modify role-based access controls. So in fact, many of our clients, they manage their DreamFactory infrastructure in an entirely automated programmatic way.
We could go quite meta and have a DreamFactory Microapp to manage DreamFactory.
We could. I think we could.
That could be our next project.
That's the plot line in Matrix 4.
Yes.
Right? So quick demo. What we'll do is we'll generate a MySQL API, which is very similar to the one used for the product Microapp. And I'll do that by clicking on Services, and I'll click on Create. And you'll see there is a service type dropdown. And what this is, it's a categorical breakdown of all of the native connectors DreamFactory supports. DreamFactory supports can generate APIs for, in fact, 20 different databases. This is actually a slightly older demo server, so we're missing MariaDB here. And that includes Postgres, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle. It also includes support for a number of NoSQL databases like MongoDB, Couchbase, and so forth. This is, I would certainly say, is the most popular platform capability, right? We can instantly generate a database API, secure it, and then start interacting with it. However, beyond that, DreamFactory can generate APIs for file systems like S3 and SFTP, email delivery providers, mobile notifications. You can add third-party REST APIs to the platform. You can also convert SOAP WSDL to REST on the fly. That's a very popular feature. You can create entirely scripted APIs. You can interact with IoT devices, with source control, with Excel. So you can take an Excel spreadsheet and turn it into a JSON string, and so forth. So there are a lot of connectors here that allow you to very easily not only generate APIs for data sources, but also for identity providers. You can create authentication APIs for OAuth, for Active Directory, for single sign-on, Okta, AWS Cognito, you name it. But what I'm going to do right now is just go back to database, and I'm going to choose MySQL. And as with every API, we're going to start with a namespace. I'll call this DreamCon for the DreamFactory conference. What this namespace is going to do is it's going to form part of the generated URI for your API. So as you'll see in a moment, DreamCon will appear in the URI. We'll call this the DreamCon MySQL API. Set a description. These are just used for referential purposes within this interface. We'll make it active. And I'm just going to start copying and pasting in credentials from another window. This is just a MySQL database, employees, corporate, and I'll copy in the password here. As far as MySQL is concerned, we're done. We have entered these credentials. If this were SQL Server or Oracle or Postgres, you'd additionally add a schema designation. In addition to that, you have all of these optional parameters that you can use to modify the connecting driver's behavior and so forth. You can cap the maximum number of records. You can enable caching, but I'll just leave all of that disabled for now, and I'll press save. And I'll close LastPass. It's always bothering me. We've generated this full-featured REST API for that MySQL database. We've also generated all of the API docs. And if I click on API docs, go to DreamCon, you'll see a list of all of the endpoints that were just generated for that API. If I just scroll back up to the top, you'll see we can call stored functions and stored procedures. We can interact with the schema. We can, most importantly for many users, we can carry out CRUD operations. So tying this back to the micro app, when John was showing the interface builder for creating a new product, when the user presses that create product button, it's this endpoint that's being requested. When we are presented with a list of products, it's this endpoint that's being requested. And if I click on try it out, this documentation is all interactive. You'll see that we have all of these different parameters which can be used to query for the data found in a particular table in this case, right? So if the micro app wanted to maybe filter on product names and allowing the user to maybe type in a partial name, you could use the filter parameter. Or if you only wanted to request specific fields, you could use the fields parameter. If you wanted to join multiple tables together, you can use related. You can also limit, you can offset, you can order, you can group, you can count. Anything that you would typically do with a SQL query, you can do with the DreamFactory API. And if I just go down to the table name field, enter employees, press execute, you'll see that this data has been returned in JSON format. And that's, of course, what, in the case of our demo, what the micro app builder is consuming. You can additionally use the scripting engine to transform what this data looks like. So imagine maybe John wanted to use maybe a more advanced control and form control, or we wanted to filter out some maybe PII before it is sent to that micro app. You can use the scripted endpoints to do that, or the scripting engine, I should say. After you've generated this API, after you've had a look at the API docs, typically the next step would be to secure it. And of course, that's a recurring theme of this DreamCon conference. In order to secure that API, you'll go to the Rules tab. And if I just head on over to the Rules tab and press Create, we'll create micro app rule. We'll create a rule called DreamCon micro app rule. I'll set it to active and I'll press next. And this is without a doubt one of my favorite features of the platform. What we can do with this is we can define very specific role-based access controls. I'm going to find my API that we've just generated. Now imagine we wanted to create a read-only API. Maybe this is just something that's going to notify the end user. What you can do is you can choose your service, you can choose your API endpoint. Maybe in this case, we want to expose the entire API. And finally, we can choose access. And if we're creating a read-only API, we're only going to allow the get HTTP method to be used. And if I were to save that role-based access control, we can subsequently tie it to an API key. That API key would then be used within the microapp builder. And if there were any attempts to post to that API or to put or to patch or delete, they're going to be denied. Likewise, maybe you only want to expose, in the case of a MySQL database API, maybe just 2 tables. And you want to allow read and insert access. We could choose the employees table. We could choose the DreamCon service again. And maybe we'll choose this time the departments table, not the schema, but the table. And maybe this is only going to be read only, right? So we have total control over how this API is going to be accessed, whether it's within a micro app or within a mobile application or maybe a dashboard, right? Or any other client. You're going to be able to use this point and click interface and know for sure that that client, that end user is going to be constrained to exactly what it is that you've defined here, right? So we generated this API. Once we've done so, if we're going to build that micro app within Citrix Workspace Builder, we can then proceed with the integration steps as John described earlier in this presentation. Did that more or less summarize the walkthrough, John? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think one of the really interesting things about this solution is just, quite frankly, I don't have a developer background, but I was able to get up and going really rapidly and
that is right.
Start working on the demos. I think the other bit as well that's really important to a lot of our customers as well is the fact that the DreamFactory solution does work on premises as well as your sort of cloud offering. Which is obviously a great thing. I think being able to bring in those on-premises legacy apps into this world, I think is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, no, I think that's been really good. I think if people want to know more about what we're doing with Workspace, then developer.cloud.com will be a great place to go check it out. As I mentioned earlier, you can request a 30-day instance of Citrix Workspace, which includes the micro app builder, so you can actually get developing and building some micro apps, and you can renew that every 30 days. But yeah, if you've got any further questions, by all means reach out to me. More than happy to take questions.
Likewise, I've just pulled up our contact information. I'm certainly happy to field questions, whether it's over email or Twitter. I've included both of our Twitter handles here. And again, if you want to learn more about Citrix, we've included 2 URLs. Same for DreamFactory. And regarding that second DreamFactory link, genie.dreamfactory.com, John is exactly right. DreamFactory has long been supported as an on-premise solution. However, if you'd like to give it a try, you are certainly welcome to head over to genie.dreamfactory.com and sign up for a 14-day hosted trial. So with that, thank you very much, John. I thought this went very well, and hopefully the viewers find it interesting.
Awesome. Take care.
Great. Thank you.